All right. So some of you enjoyed the kiss cam a little bit more than others. None of you realized you were supposed to kiss your relevant partner. Scott, I think, had a vague idea what was going on there. But it's lots of fun, guys. For the video, it makes for really good watching, just to see your shocked expression when you realize that more than 100 people are staring at you individually. I don't see anybody else. Terry, can I just ask you if you can switch the waiting room on automatic so that if anybody else does come in at this moment in time, that they can come in. So thank you very much for that. I want to give you a really warm welcome to a very special event tonight. Rugby sport is very close to our hearts, and especially to our interviewer tonight, Dr. Dean Allen. I just want to give him a little bit of an introduction. Dean is, when you hear his voice, you'll hear he's not from South Africa, but when you hear his heart, you can hear he's all South African. He's absolutely passionate about South Africa. He's passionate about sport. He's a professional speaker and historian. He has a doctorate in history, and he speaks about sport as if it's the most important thing, and I love that. And so one of the things that he's done is he's come to South Africa, and he has studied here at the University of Stellenbosch. What he won't tell you, he's a very acclaimed author. He's written a book called Empire, War and Cricket, which for those of you who've written books is an extreme bestseller. It's sold over 10,000 copies in this country alone. And a very accomplished speaker. To the ladies of the Players Fund who've been invaluable in setting up this meeting, thank you so much to the ladies there. And to Dean also, Dean, thank you for all the effort that you've put in, and for all the people that have been involved in making tonight a success. Terry Winship is driving the technical controls. So Terry, thank you for everything there. But without further ado, if I can hand over to Dr. Dean Allen, who will be conducting the interview for tonight. Dr. Dean.
Thank you, Andre, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the wilderness, because that's where I find myself, on the garden route. I hope you're all well. I'm so excited to be able to host this evening tonight. It's something, as I said, we've been looking forward to for a long time now. A little bit of relief from this current craziness that we find ourselves in. But as I said, this is an exciting precedent tonight. You're part of a pilot, because what we hope to do is each week bring you an interview with one of the stars of the game, one of these people that we hold close to our hearts, a Springbok rugby player. And as I said, it's all in support of a great cause, the Players Fund. More of that later, and I'm sure Jean will actually tell you more about that. But before I go any further, some of you know me, I know, and hello to my friends in the room here. But those who don't, you're probably wondering why this Englishman with this strange accent is sitting here interviewing one of your rugby greats. Well, I do feel South African. I arrived, in fact, in the mid-90s, fell in love with the country. It was, in fact, a woman I followed here, a Van der Merwe was her name, believe it or not. That love affair actually finished, unfortunately, but my love affair with South Africa continued. I ended up going to Stellenbosch University. That's right, an Englishman at Stellenbosch in the early 2000s, which was quite unusual. In fact, people used to say to me, well, you're the only Englishman in town, would you believe that? But it was then that I understood and I appreciated the passion that this country has for rugby. And I wanted to find out more about it. So now I'm going back to my first love, which is rugby. Yes, I may have written a book about cricket, but it's rugby that really does drive this nation, as we know. We're all still on the crest of a wave from what happened last year. Before I go any further, you're probably wondering, which side of the fence did I sit on back there in November 2019? Well, I can tell you, I was the only Englishman in the pub that day supporting South Africa, because I feel South African. In fact, I'm sure the Boks are part of my blood as well. So if you'll forgive me for my accent, I'm certainly a passionate South African rugby supporter. Now, before we go any further, I just want to give you a taster of what we're going to do next week. This time next week, I hope you'll be able to join us again, because we've lined up another rugby great, none other than Schalk Burger. I spoke to Schalk earlier today, and he's so excited to join us. So I'm sure that'll be a great interview. But before we go any further tonight, I want to focus on tonight's guest. Captain Fantastic, we've called him, Jean de Villiers. Before I go any further, I want to show you a video that sums up the abilities of this man. Terry, could you play the video, please? Wonderful stuff there. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you a holder of 109 test caps for South Africa, the most capped South African centre, Jean de Villiers. Good evening, Jean.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. It's fantastic to be on this platform tonight. It's always cool to watch a highlights package like that. But I'm sure if we had to package together all the mistakes that I made in the game, we'd be sitting here much longer. But thank you very much. You said you're sitting in wilderness. I think we're all sitting in the wilderness at the moment in this lockdown, and it's nice just to be able to interact on a platform like this.
Thank you. No, thank you, Jean, so much for joining us tonight. Yeah, they are strange times, I must admit. Now, how have you been finding lockdown, and how have you been keeping fit?
Yeah, look, to be honest, a pity about the circumstances that led to us obviously being in this situation. But for me, someone who obviously traveled a lot in my playing days and still post retirement from rugby, who travels a lot, for me to be able to have been at home during this time with my kids and wife and really just have quality time and excuse me, and start appreciating the things that really matter in life again. That's been pretty cool for me as well. So I suppose in any bad situation, it's being able to see the good in it and to take the positives out of it, and that's certainly been the positive for me. But yeah, it's frustrating, the situation we find ourselves in, and hopefully we can just get out of it at some stage.
Yeah, certainly these are unprecedented times. I've been doing a few talks about the 1918 Spanish flu, would you believe, and comparisons with history. So it's not the first time that actually we found ourselves in these situations. We will come through this, I'm sure. Now, the reason why we're here tonight, there's so many positives happening at the moment while we're trying to work out the current situation, is that we look to good causes, and perhaps we reflect, like you said, on our life and where we're going. And one of the things that I know that you're heavily involved in is this wonderful players charity called the Players Fund. In fact, you're the chairman of that fund. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. And look, it's a great honour for me to call myself the chairman of the Players Fund. I'm only the second chairman in the history of this fund. We're 40 years old, celebrating our 40 years of existence this year. And sort of I've got the task of following in the footsteps of Morne du Plessis, who was one of the founders of the fund, and also the chairman for a very long time. The unfortunate thing, I suppose, about the fund is that it started because of a casualty in rugby. Chris Berger passed away because of a spinal injury that he occurred in a rugby game. And then the fund was sort of created to be able to help his family get through, a life-changing occurrence in their lives. A couple of years later, Petra Jackson, and the same happened to him. And excuse me. And after that, the two sort of merged. And so the Chris Berger Petra Jackson Players Fund was formed. We are the official charity of the Springboks, and what we do is we look after those players that had life-changing injuries because of rugby, spinal injuries, that affected the players, obviously, that they can't play rugby anymore, but usually either wheelchair bound or some sort of disability. Some of them get through it as well and get back to a full recovery, and of that we are obviously very proud. But the unfortunate thing is that some are affected in a bad way. So we are trying to help with that transition from leading a normal life, being able to play rugby, to being wheelchair bound, and everything in your life having to adapt because of that. So it's a critical role that we do play. And unfortunately, rugby is a contact sport, and injuries are part and parcel of the game. It's only a small amount of people that gets affected in a way where we can help them, and we try and make the game as safe as possible. But it does still happen, and we try and help with that transition in those difficult times. So I suppose you find yourself in a position like this where you form part of this players fund. You see the great work that some of the ladies in the fund are doing to help these people, and you think that you are able to help others, but then you see the character of these guys that where a terrible thing in their, to put it quite bluntly, happened in their lives, but to see the positivity that they have on life, to see how they still love the game of rugby, and how we almost form a family atmosphere for those badly affected by the injury of in a rugby game. So it's a critical part of South African rugby, I would say, but it's an extremely rewarding one as well, and one that I'm very proud to be part of.
No, it's a tremendous cause. I know when I've been trying to sort of connect with people about tonight's event, that the admiration and the high esteem that the Players Fund is held in within the rugby communities is quite obvious there. So yes, like yourself, I'd like to thank Gail and Tori for supporting tonight's event, of course, and let's hope that we can raise lots of money and we can make this a regular thing in support of it. It's all about raising the profile, because I believe I'm a passionate football fan, but I'm also a very, very big rugby fan, and I think that's what rugby has got over any other sport, in my opinion. I think it's this community ethos that players and supporters come together when there's a need, and I think we're seeing that now. So I'm sure you're grateful, as I am, all the people who've tuned in tonight to support this cause. But anyway, I want to start now with a few questions about your own career. Now, as you know, I think we share one thing in common, which is that we're ex-Marties. Yes, we both went to Stellenbosch University. That's where I actually discovered this passion for rugby. Well, a passion that this country has for rugby. I remember walking around the sports fields and watching the different houses playing each other. And then, of course, when the Marties played, the whole town stopped. And I tried to dig a bit deeper about where this actually came from. And I realized that a lot of the players adopted this passion for rugby, not only from their parents, but especially during their school years. Now, I made a massive faux pas when we spoke for the first time, didn't we, earlier in the week? I got your school wrong inadvertently. I actually said that you went to Paarl Boys High, and by the look of your face, I thought you were going to tackle me there and then. You actually went to Paarl Gym, of course. So if you don't mind, I want you to start from where your rugby career began and your days at school, and where that actually led to your early representation for the Springboks, etc.
Yeah, Dean, I think you're 100% right in that you didn't start first by getting that wrong. Also, I was very confused that they get an historian to talk to me about rugby, which means I'm history in terms of rugby in South Africa. That really hurt me as well, but I've made peace with that. Jokes aside, yeah, it's a great rivalry that we have in Paarl, with the two schools, Paarl Gymnasium and Paarl Boys. And it extends further than that throughout South Africa, where schoolboy rugby is really strong. And I think what really helps with that is the fact that you're part of a bigger team. You're part of something bigger than just yourself, and whether you are playing for the first team or whether you are just one of the supporters or sitting in the stands singing the school songs, you all feel part of this this bigger thing, and I think with that goes the history of the schools, the tradition of the schools, and I think if you combine all of that, it creates discipline, and I suppose it gives you a bit of purpose for this higher being almost. So I was fortunate to go to Paarl Gymnasium. And as I mentioned to you then, when you got the school wrong, I will just emphasize again that you got it wrong. It's if it wasn't for the other, if it wasn't for Paarl Boys, I don't think Paarl Gymnasium would have had the status that it has now, and vice versa. So it's like one of those great rivalries, Nadal Federer or Agassi Sampras or Barcelona Real Madrid. You need two strong teams. You need two strong competitors to go up against each other to really lift image, I suppose, of that derby. So the Paul Jim Paul Boys derby yearly, literally splits the whole of Paul in half, and you're either the one or the other. It splits families in half for that week, and I think it's just a brilliant tradition. In saying that, I do think we sometimes run the risk where it has become so big that that winning becomes everything and the only thing, and that is not healthy either. I think the healthy thing about this derby is old years ago they have their get-togethers during that week, and really relive those traditions and history. Not the result, and sometimes we push so hard the result, and that becomes the only thing, and then a very dangerous line.
So how did you experience this then, John? I mean, the pressures you were under, obviously playing in sort of first team rugby then, did that give you some kind of preparation for what was to come? And then can you just explain how you transcended your school playing days, and how did you get the opportunity to then go further and then to look at this as a potentially a career or professional path for you to take? When did that happen?
Yeah, I think I can look back now and see that, in a way, those big games as a schoolboy, really helped with preparation for life as a professional rugby player. When you, as a 16, 17-year-old, play in front of 25,000 people, with all the pressures that goes with that, in a way, it prepares you for test match rugby. And I suppose you learn through it and from it. You learn through the wins. You learn even more through the losses. And I experienced both. So for me it was an unbelievable experience to look. Rugby's been part of my life all my life. I can't remember a time in my life where rugby was not relevant. I always wanted to become a professional rugby player even before I turned professional. And then eventually I got that opportunity. So I think my passion for rugby and the absolute love of the game kept me in the game. And luckily, I was pretty good at it at school, and got a contract straight out of school. So I think my last 2 or 3 months of my final year, my matric year at school, I was getting a salary already. And, I really thought that I made it then. So you feel pretty good when you've got some money in the bank account, but you're still at school. And then the following year, a professional career started. So in a way, for me, that transition from schoolboy rugby, being amateur, to sort of transitioning into a professional career, that happened quite easily, to be blunt. And I suppose, after my first 2 years of professional rugby, I realized that you probably need to work a little bit harder, and I had some accent.
Yeah. So when you made the step up, you played for the sevens, I believe. How did that prepare you? I mean, you were a winger originally, so clearly you liked scoring points and scoring tries. So that was something. And then I just want to talk about the moment you knew that probably you'd made it, when you were picked for the Springboks. You made your debut against France in November 2002, and of course it wasn't probably the debut you were thinking of, that you'd imagined, you were dreaming of since a kid. Just explain how this transition happened, because you are now in your 20s, your early 20s, and now you've got the game at your feet, you've been picked by your country, and then, as sport does, it gives us a reminder that everything can change in an instant.
Yeah, and I sort of alluded to it in the previous question, is that, my transition from amateur to professional was pretty easy. I played representative rugby for Western Province throughout my school years, at age group level. I then played SA schools, SA under 19 for 2 years, SA under 21 for 2 years, SA sevens, and then became a Springbok at the age of 21. and won a under-21 World Cup in that year as well. So, played every team imaginable during age groups, and then became a Springbok. The thing that I worked for, the thing that I dreamt about all my life. And I can still remember sort of going to the field, the 9th of November, 2002 in Marseille. Driving to the stadium on the team bus, and it was dark already, and the bus, and I was sort of looking around and just taking everything in, and started noticing my teammates, the other guys on the bus, and I was thinking back to 3 years prior to that, when I was still at school, watching the 1999 Rugby World Cup, and where South Africa lost in the semi-final against Australia with that Stephen Larkin drop goal. And I was thinking, how sad I was when we lost that game. But now I was sitting in this team bus, and a lot of the players that played in that game, they were now my teammates. And I couldn't believe it. And probably that was the moment where I thought, okay, no, I've made it now. And then you try and take in all of that emotion, and I remember singing the national anthem, and throughout my career, it's probably one of the most special moments of playing Test match rugby is when you stand there, you sing the national anthem. When you hear at home, filled stadiums, and you hear the crowd singing the national anthem, that's beautiful sounds you'll ever hear, and I think a special feeling for me throughout my career. So I was standing there singing the national anthem, and you get quite emotional, and I was like thinking of my parents, and the opportunities that they gave me, and how I'm here now, and I just wanted to make them proud, and then you kick off, and I was always very nervous before games because you can't do anything about the result prior to the game. Okay, so I always became nervous because you can't do anything. You got no influence over about the result of the game. But once you kick off, then I'm in control. This is what I trained for. This is what you've been preparing for, and you can influence the result by the way that you play. We kick off the game. 7 minutes into the game, my first sort of action in the game where I'll get to participate. Thomas Castanier, my opposite number from France, takes an outside gap. I tackle him. I get up to steal the ball again. Guy hits me from the side on the ground. Knee ligaments off. I get stretchered off the field. Now, when you're a 21-year-old dreaming of playing for South Africa all your life, and then you get the opportunity, the night before you dream about scoring 3 tries, South Africa winning the game, and you man of the match. You don't envisage yourself being stretchered off. And then suddenly in that moment, from sort of being stretchered off, to showering, to getting back home, to getting the operation, starting a rehab and all of that. I think that was probably one of the biggest growth opportunities for me throughout my career, because suddenly I realized that I had a taste of what I always wanted, but it was taken away. But for me to experience that again, I would have to work so much harder to get back again, and not knowing whether I will ever get that opportunity again. So it was extremely tough for me then. As a 21-year-old, like I said, you're still pretty immature. I saw some youngsters on the call as well, so I'm not saying you guys are immature. I was an immature 21-year-old. And emotionally probably not knowing how to deal with it. But I surrounded myself with good people eventually, and credit to them, they got me through it, and I got back onto the field again.
You'll probably smile at this, but when I spoke to Skalk earlier, he said, "Oh my goodness, you've got me and John on the first 2 guests. We could spend hours just talking about our injuries." Now, we're not going to do that tonight, but I think it's an important thing to focus on, because we're actually doing this tonight for that same cause. Rugby is a physical game. In fact, it's probably one of the toughest games in the world. So therefore, injuries are a natural part of that game. But what you've described to me is actually fundamental. The fact that we can be at the top of the world, and then within an instant it can change on a sports field, certainly. And an important thing we're finding now is obviously the mental side of the game as well, how people can recover from these setbacks. And I think that's an important part of the support that the Players Fund actually provide, as well as the physical and the financial support, of course. Now, I don't want to stress the injuries, of course, but famously, you know, the injury you got in 2007 as well. I mean, incredible. Just this World Cup has now opened up. You've been part of a successful team. You won the Tri-Nations in 2004. And here you are now, one of the favourites, if not the favourites, rightly so, in 2007. You're leading the team into the World Cup, and then this happens again. Surely you must start questioning your luck at that stage.
Yeah, look, you know, even if you go 4 years prior to that in 2003, so, you know, I had the debut injury in 2002. And look, just again, I don't mind speaking about my injuries because it's become such a big part of my life, and I suppose what I've learned through it is important, and that's why we're having this conversation. But in 2002, had that injury, my knee injury. I was out for 9 months, able to come back prior to the World Cup in 2003, and eventually made it into the squad to go to Australia. We played our last warm-up game before we flew over to Australia against the Falcons in Springs. I played for 15 minutes, got tackled, fell awkwardly on my arm. Another guy fell on top and I sort of popped my shoulder, you know, and I was out for another 8 months after that again. And missed the World Cup, so I didn't even get on the plane to fly to Australia. And then 4 years later, as you rightly mentioned, you know, we won the Tri-Nations in 2004, and very fortunate to be part of that squad. Pretty successful year in 2005, and then the 2007 World Cup. You know, got there, and sort of my comments to the guys were, look, you know, there's no chance I'm getting injured because I got injured the previous World Cup. So you guys are at risk. And 5 minutes into the second half of the first game of the World Cup against Samoa, I tackled the smallest guy on the field, seeing that Samoans are just huge people. So I decided to tackle the smallest guy. His head hits my arm, my bicep, and I rupture my bicep and had to fly home, World Cup over. So that again was a big disappointment for me, and a difficult one to get over, because, you know, we were so successful in that World Cup and managed to win it. And even though I received a gold medal as well, you know, I never really thought that I did enough to really deserve that medal. So, you know, the sort of mental side of getting through that and refocusing again and setting new goals, you know, that took some time for me as well. But I got through it, and you know, and eventually got back onto the field in 2008, and in that year, you know, I won South African Player of the Year for that season. So I suppose it's, you know, it's not always the setback, it's not always the disappointment, the adversity. It's what you do with it, and whether it's an injury, whether it's stuck in lockdown, whether, you know, whatever adversity might look like for you in your life, in your little bubble at any given time, it really is your attitude in times of adversity that will determine whether you will be successful or not, or what you deem success to look like. Because it comes down to a decision. Either you give up and you move on, or you try get through it. You try test yourself. You try get through the barrier that is stuck there. And I suppose I was able to do that at times. But I mentioned earlier that I was able to surround myself with good people, and I can't emphasize that enough. Because even though I was able to get through the mental barriers of a lot of these injuries, I had days where I wanted to give up, you know. I had days where I didn't want to get up again and go through the pain and put in the work, because the easier option would have been just to give up. No one really would have noticed. No one really would have cared. But I had people in my life that in those times where I was doubting myself and where I wanted to give up, they gave me motivation again. They gave me purpose again to really just keep fighting. And I think that's life, and those challenges, those adversities look different for all of us at different stages. But I think the process that you need to put in place remains the same.
I think that's a tremendous philosophy. I interviewed earlier in the week a professional footballer who had a lot of challenges through his career, and the same thing came out: this need for support, of course, because it is a high pressurized industry in which you work as a professional sportsman. People are looking to knock you down, and of course, you always have the threat of injury at any moment. But I just wanted to focus on that attitude that we can all hear from you, Jean. Clearly, that's what the Springbok selectors and people in charge actually saw in you from an early age, I would hope to think. So can you remember then when you were told you were going to actually captain your country, and what did that mean to you? Can you give us some sense of emotion, what that actually meant to you?
Yeah, look, I can remember it very well. So, there was a couple of years on in 2012. So, 2011, I was part of that World Cup team as well. And just for the record, I got injured in the first game of that World Cup as well, just to continue the trend with me and World Cups. Luckily, I was able to stay, to stay on in New Zealand for that World Cup and recover from my injury to play in the quarterfinal, which we unfortunately lost against Australia. But then post that World Cup, a lot of players moved on, a lot of players retired, and there was a bit of a void in terms of leadership for the Boks. Heineken Meyer was appointed as coach, and we started off the international calendar that year with the 3-test series against the English. So we got together as a squad on the Sunday. So you get together on the Sunday, the team is not trained together at all prior to that. New coach, we don't have a captain yet. And you're playing on Saturday in 6 days' time. So you basically got 3 training sessions to become a team. And you don't even have a captain yet. And we had meetings throughout the day on the Sunday when we got together in Durban. And I went back up to my room after the meetings. I think we finished at about 10 o'clock-ish in the evening. Went to my room, to go to bed. And as I got there, my room phone rang. Picked up and heard that it was our team manager, Ian Schwartz. So he said, no, would I mind just coming down to his room quickly? He's just got something down there for me. So I went down. As I walk in, there's the team manager sitting and Heineken Meyer, the coach. So asked me to sit down. Now, obviously, I start sort of thinking, okay, well, there's something going on here. Long story short, he said, well, he'd like you to consider the captaincy for the first test. And he would give me 24 hours to think about it. But by tomorrow evening, in other words, Monday evening, he needs an answer because obviously the team needs a captain. So, I just turned to him and said, no, it doesn't matter. I'll take it. You don't have to wait until tomorrow. So in a joking way, but I just knew that, the task at hand was still so huge to, the captaincy was pretty cool. It's a cool thing to have, but if the team doesn't perform, if I don't get the team to back me, there's no chance of me making a success of it. So, left the room, went up back to my room, sat on my bed, phoned my wife, and sort of, told her, well, I'm the Springbok captain, and post that, phoned my parents. And I can still remember after I spoke to them, I sort of sat on the bed staring out the window for a while and thinking, but this can't be true. So an extremely proud moment. But I mean, immediately after that, I started thinking of what can go wrong, the responsibility, what if we lose, what if I'm a bad captain, all of those things, and realize that it's a nice to have, but it's a massive responsibility, and the responsibility is so much more than just the captaining on the field. So it's something that I enjoyed a hell of a lot, and just so honored to have been able to captain my country.
It's an incredible privilege, of course, and well, in many respects, it's probably the second biggest job in South Africa after the president, isn't it? I mean, the pressure that the Springbok captain's under is quite incredible. But I'm glad to say that you had great success with the Springboks. You had certainly a great team around you, that's for sure. But listen, I warned you earlier, Jean, you're not going to get away with this lightly. I'm going to give you a little test now. I'm just going to ask you a few questions about your club career and see if you can remember, because we're now going to deal with your overseas experience. You moved to Munster, which is an interesting one. Can you remember your first game on the 27th of September for Munster, 2009? Was it against Northampton or was it against Newport Dragons?
Newport Dragons, and it wasn't in Limerick, which is our home base. It was in Cork, on the other field.
Okay, right. You've passed that test. Tell me about your experience with the Irish. I mean, did you have fun over there? I mean, I taught at a bit further north in Belfast for 3 years, probably the happiest 3 years of my life. Absolutely enjoyed the Irish. Obviously, their sense of humour, the music and the pub culture, it was fantastic. But also, they're passionate rugby fans, aren't they?
Yeah, they're super passionate. And I absolutely loved my time at Munster. It's an extremely special club as well, and the Irish people are just so so warm and just fantastic people. So I love, I think I made a fantastic choice in club first of all, and the experience there was just a fantastic one to be able to learn. About the game, look at the game from a different perspective. I was stuck sort of in a lot of the same. At Western, and look, my heart is Western Province and the Stormers and all that. But sometimes you get into a comfort zone, and I was probably in a comfort zone then. So moving to Munster was a great move for me to keep learning, to meet new people, to get taken out of my comfort zone and having to work hard again, and made some fantastic friends. I still love going back there. I still have contact with a lot of guys that I played with there, and again, an awesome experience, and one that I believe every rugby player, that when he gets the opportunity, should try and experience something in a different country.
Okay, well, top of the class, you got that question right. The second one involves your rather short career at Leicester Tigers. Now, you scored the one try. Now, who was it against? Can you remember?
Yeah, London Irish, and we played the Harlequins the week before, if that's the question.
Yes, it is. Well done. Oh, I can't beat you. I'm going to give up here, I tell you. It's but going back to you mentioned, of course, Western Province and Stormers. I mean, they're close to your heart. Of course, all of us here in Cape Town know that this is where your passion lies. But I want to just mention the ground. Now, Newlands, that dear old ground, of course, is going to be no more soon. And that's something I wanted just to reflect on, because perhaps we're not even going to give it the send-off it deserves because of the current crisis. Terry, have we got a picture of Newlands so we can remember, so we can actually see how beautiful this ground is for those people who don't know Newlands rugby? Can we just put that up? How about that? There's not many stadiums in the world that has a backdrop like that. And Newlands for me is it's steeped in history. You don't have to be a historian. Can you give us some special memories about that, John? And what are your feelings with the ground actually coming to an end of its history and moving, of course, to the Cape Town Stadium?
Yeah, look, that image, I think that we are seeing at the moment, it speaks a million words, and I mean, I'm even smelling it now by just looking at it. I can smell it, I can feel it, I can, the emotions that goes through my body thinking of Newlands. I was extremely fortunate that I learned about rugby at Newlands, watching rugby at Newlands, going through with my dad. My family, my dad, my mom, and my brother. We still had the scholar seats next to the field, on the main stand and railway stand side, and you could run onto the field after the final whistle. But always when we went to the games, drove through here from Paarl to go watch the games, I always said, well, I don't want to go just for the main attraction, just for the Currie Cup game or whatever. I want to watch the Western Province League play. I want to watch the under-21s play. I want to see everything, So I can remember, the team, some of those special teams in the Western Province League team, even they were still in the isolation years where, you had Wilfred Kipido and Tinus Lanier and Solly Geduld and, fantastic rugby players, watching them play. And then the Currie Cup and the under-21 players when you had Krige and Montgomery and Fleck and Hoti Lowe and all those guys in the under-21 team. So, I watched my first test match there in 1992 when South Africa played against the Wallabies, wet day at Newlands. Nas Botha couldn't kick a goal that day, and he didn't want to hand over the kicking tee, and I was very frustrated that day because he didn't. We unfortunately lost that game, and that's where my passion sort of grew. After the final whistle, then you get to actually play around on the pitch. So you took your rugby ball with, and you would play touch rugby or tackle rugby or just kick the ball while my parents were at the cocktail dinner or whatever, and dreaming. And then my sort of I suppose journey started where I started dreaming of one day playing a game here. And in 1994, I got my first opportunity playing at Newlands for Western Province under 13 Cravenweek side. Again, played in the high school Cravenweek, and then as a professional player, being able to run out there and really live my dream at a stadium where I grew up watching the game, where I know every little piece of that ground. And my parents, well, they still have their season tickets. I know exactly where they sit. So whilst I was playing, I could watch them. I could wave at them. When we used to lose, but it's a special ground. Villiers is no more, and we'll be moving on. And I think change is a difficult thing for all of us. The memories will last, and probably the one thing I left out, my 101st test match. I played, unfortunately, my 100th test match we played overseas, but my 101st test match I played at Newlands against Australia. I was able to run out with my two daughters, my wife there, pregnant with our son, my parents there, my brother there, my friends watching. We played Australia. I scored 2 tries. We won the game. It was everything that I loved combined in one day. And probably the thing I remember most was after the game, walking around the field with my 2 daughters, aged, what were they then? Aged 3 and 1, and them running around and playing on the field. And I sort of, I was thinking back of when I used to do it as a teenager. So sort of full circle. Probably should have retired after that game, but just great memories about Newlands. And it's sad that we are moving. And like I said, change is never easy, but the memories will last, and hopefully we can build a fortress at Cape Town Stadium as well.
Yeah, wonderful memories, of course, because this is what builds the culture of sport. I mean, those kind of memories. I mean, that did sound like the ideal game you played that day. Talking about an ideal day, I want to just bring it forward now. What happened last year? I want you to explain your emotions on the 2nd of November 2019. I can tell you my emotions. I woke up that morning and I was torn, of course, as an Englishman. I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I woke up and I thought, no, I'm South African. I feel South African. And as I said, we watched that World Cup final against England in a bar in Spain, would you believe, full of English expats, so very passionate English nationals here. And I sat on my hands for the entire, you can imagine the tension in the first half, this game was so close. We didn't know which way it was going to go. And I remember the moment, this English lady next to me, she said, well, those Springboks, they're so boring. They don't even score a try in the final, do they? And with that, as you remember, that wonderful try happened right in the corner. I lost all control. I stood up and I said, there's your try. And the whole bar looked at me. But if you remember, it was about a minute, wasn't it, or so, for the video referee to give the try. That was the longest minute of my life. But anyway, as we know, they went on and won. And it was a fantastic day. What were your impressions of that? And how important was that win last year for the country?
Yeah, it was huge. Look, and I remember it very well. And I was very fortunate to actually be with my very good friend, Scott Berger, whom you'll be interviewing next week. And we were in the studio together working for SuperSport, doing the game. And we were together. Another very good friend, Butch James, was also there. I think Akona and Dugani was also there. So I was fortunate to have been surrounded by friends and to just enjoy the moment together. I think to explain what it meant to South Africa and to explain the effect, it's too difficult to put it in words. And I think we're still living through that effect. We're still seeing the benefits of that. And how we really can use sport as a tool to unite, to create social cohesion, to uplift, to provide hope, to do so many things. But I think the amazing thing about that team and about the win is that firstly, it was so close to a perfect game that they played in that final. But you take the players that did it, and you take their stories, and a lot has been said about Sia and his story, and it is a phenomenal story. But I do want to add that there are so many others in that group that's got very similar stories, stories of adversity, stories of fighting through it, and stories of being now world champions. So, Sia, I think, did an unbelievable job. He's still doing an unbelievable job, and I think the challenge for that group is, was not the winning of the World Cup. It is what happens after that. How does South Africa and the rest of the world, how do they see this team and the individuals in this side? And I think they've been spectacular in the way that they have behaved, in the way that they've been humble in this victory. And that to me is just so heartwarming. Sport has a massive effect, and rugby has a massive responsibility in South Africa. And this time around, they were able to pick themselves up, put up a hell of a performance, and just make South Africa proud again. But I want to emphasize the stories of so many of those individuals in that side. That is what makes me, so proud. It's not just stories of guys wanting to win a World Cup and they woke up the next day, they played the game and they won. There's so much more in it, and the character of all those individuals, I thought, came through in that final. And seeing Makazole Mapimpi and Cheslin Colby scoring those tries, absolutely priceless.
Well, they certainly saved my skin that day, that's for sure, I must admit. But I totally get it. Rugby, more than anything in this country, I think, embraces the things you were talking about. I mean, I look back as far as 1906 and Paul Roos, the first ever Springbok captain. And then, of course, we all know the story in 95. And I just think last year was extra special because it was indicative of a country that was perhaps looking for a boost, something to distract from the usual troubles that we talk about here in South Africa. So it was much needed. I'm sure you'll agree. Now, what I just, before we start wrapping up, and I'm sure the viewers have got lots of questions for you, I just want to get your thoughts on the current status of the Springboks and with the change in management structure, the fact that Rassie is now being moved up in the hierarchy. Do you think that's going to have a detrimental effect, or is that a good thing for the squad?
Yeah, look, I think for the first time in the professional era, we've managed to have some sort of consistency in the management group and the coaching group of the Springboks. Post every World Cup, we've managed to sort of get rid of everyone and get a new group in. And that inconsistency certainly has an effect on the performances of the squad. So I like the fact that there's that consistency. Look, Rassie has changed his moved from head coach now to director of rugby. He's not just going to move away and tell Jacques Nienaber, yeah, now you take over. He'll still have quite a lot to do with the day-to-day ongoings of the Springboks, and sort of, I think, and again, this is my view, provide more and more of the responsibilities over to Jacques over time. And I think that's a great approach to have. And hopefully we can have consistency in the selection as well. Only a couple of guys that retired from the game, so that is a positive for us as well. The only problem we have at this stage is the fact that we're not playing any rugby, so we can't really see, and we can't really grow through this transitional phase. I think the fact that they were going to play Scotland and Georgia was also a easy-ish kind of introduction back into international rugby, and a nice easing in for the new coaching staff, whereas things will look totally different now once rugby gets on its way again. So massive challenge for the new coaching team, but I like the fact that there's a bit of consistency, and to be quite blunt and honest, is that there's not a lot of guys, I think, that were able to put their hands up and say, select me as the next Springbok coach. So I've worked with Jacques Nienaber, for a long time, and he's an absolute workaholic. He's a fantastic guy, and I'm sure that he'll take the Boks through this transitional phase and make a success of it.
Yeah, I can see the questions starting to flood in. But before we go any further, I did ask you earlier, John, and I hope you remembered, to bring a jersey along, a jersey that represents something special in your career. Did you remember?
I didn't. I didn't. It brings something. And look, I don't really have any of my jerseys or anything up here in my house, but I've got this one special piece. It's a bit heavy.
Fantastic.
A special pair of boots that Adidas made for me, with my signature on. This is not a boot that retails. It's a special one that was made for me back then, and something that I think is pretty cool. A brand that I was with throughout my career, and and I was just very fortunate that they were able to make a special boot for me. Just a pity that on that day when we played New Zealand in Wellington, and when I played with these boots, we lost. But besides the loss, it was pretty cool.
And come on, you had that wonderful day at Newlands to look back on, didn't you? But I'll have to give Skalk a bit more notice then, because I've got a feeling he's going to have to search high and wide for a special jersey. But we'll do that next week, I promise you, everybody watching. Now, Andre, can we have a few questions? I can see them coming in thick and fast here.
They're coming in fast and furious. So I'm going to do some of it, John, as a form of a quiz. As a fan or a player, who is your favorite Springbok player? No, sorry, your favorite Springbok game.
What's my favorite Springbok game?
Yes.
Well, I think the World Cup final last year would rank up there as one of my favorite games that I watched. But probably that I was part of. Look, my 101st Test match was just such a special day throughout. Taking everything into consideration. But game itself was. Performance-wise, also the one that we played in Hamilton, New Zealand, to win the 2009 Tri-Nations. We had to win that game in New Zealand to win the Tri-Nations, which we did the third time that year that we beat the All Blacks, and that was quite a special game and a special celebration post the game as well.
Well, you actually made my wife cry with your 101st game. So I had to change the camera angle a little bit there, so it obviously worked. John, your best roommate in all your years?
I didn't have a good roommate ever. Look, I And again, I'm going to mention Schalk Burger's name here because, look, we went to school together. Our families have known each other for a very long time. And then we started playing professional rugby together, and we roomed together from day one at Western Province and then at the box. So we always make the joke and say that, you know, we've probably shared a bed or a room more than what we have with our wives. But yeah, so Schalk was I think he's very, very close to a brother for me, to being a brother for me. And the other one would also be Butch James. He is a special person to have as a roommate and just a great guy to have around.
Your most difficult opponent?
Oh, yeah. I get that question a lot, and I would say most difficult opponent, in other words, a centre, I would say Maya Nonu. And the reason for that is played over 100 test matches for the All Blacks, but also, you know, just a couple of things that happened over the years. And I'll give you the example. When I played my 100th test match, he was my opposing number. Just before halftime, he broke his arm and had to go off to the hospital. Didn't play the second half. But when I got back into the change room post game, he actually took the time to put his jersey, his All Black jersey, in my locker as sort of a sign of appreciation for that test match. And something like that, I think it shows the humane nature of the individual. So great player as well, but also a good person. So I'd say Maya Nonu.
And the best player you played with as a Springbok?
Definitely myself.
Obviously, Schalk again.
I'm joking, everyone, please. Look, again, it's such an unfair question because I think I'm very fortunate that I played in an era where we had unbelievable players. You have a guy like Schalk Burger and Brian Abana who were voted World Player of the Year in 2004 and 2007. So they should definitely rank up there. You have Victor Matfield, who was one of the best line-out exponents in the history of the game. He should be up there. Farid Priya is probably one of the best nines ever to play. He should be up there. Jacques Fourie, unbelievable rugby player and centre with me. He should be up there. So there's so many. John Smith, best captain ever for South Africa. He should be up there. Osti Rand, you know. So I can probably go through the whole team. So everyone that I played with.
Yeah. I remember watching you over the years, and every time we had like a critical game, I was like, Jean, just slow down a little bit. You really are just smashing into these people too hard. We want you to keep you in one piece. So here's the question. How does the body feel now after all these years of rugby?
That has been one of the benefits of lockdown as well. I've managed to get a bit of a training regime going with my wife on a daily basis, and the body is actually feeling much better. So look, you feel the effects. I always make the joke and say that I had six knee operations, shoulder reconstruction, bicep rupture, 2 broken jaws, and other small little broken bones like fingers, toes, ribs, and those kind of things, and then a couple of muscle strains and ligament strains. So it's not too bad. But you sit here now, and I suppose the older you get, you do feel the effect of all those injuries. But then you follow that up with a question: would you do it again? And yes, I would. So that is probably the stupidity that comes out as well. And was it all worth it? Yes, it probably was.
2 more questions, and then what happens? We're gonna call it quits, and if people want to stay on, we can see. We were supposed to be on for an hour, but obviously you're very in demand, so we'll keep going. One of the things I wanted to say is you're exceptionally well spoken. Do they provide media training, speech training, that kind of thing for incumbent captains in the rugby setup in South Africa?
I don't know if they do it now, but certainly not when I started playing. I think I sort of went on that, or started becoming professional just when rugby turned professional. So a lot of the amateur stuff was still in place when I came through the ranks. There's only one person that I can thank for, because I'm Afrikaans speaking. I really speak Afrikaans to my kids as well. That I can thank for being able to speak pretty decent English, and that's my mom. So I still get it from her every day, basically. But she was a teacher, and she used to send my brother and I for some extra English classes and spoke English to us sort of once a week type thing. So yeah, we don't get training. I think there is some sort of training currently for the players, but like I said, it is a bit of a gap in the system where everything you do is you try and train as hard, work as hard to be good at rugby. But when you become a professional rugby player, it's not just about rugby. It's the media element. It's working with fans. It's working with the sponsors. It's a lot more than just being a good rugby player. And sometimes the guys lack that. So I suppose I was lucky. And like I said, a lot of credit to my mom. And then I didn't go to a bad school either. So
what was it? Paul Boys? What was it? Just checking. Last question. You seem to have made the transition quite seamlessly to business, and I know you work for Citadel, and you're working in Super Sport as a commentator. Is there anything else that you're doing? And then the last question is do you have higher aspirations in the rugby world into the future?
Sure. I think I'll start with that one. Higher aspirations. I don't think I'd ever go into coaching or anything like that. Look, when you're out of the game on a daily basis, so if you're not involved with it on a daily basis, and you're out of that for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you fall behind. And I don't think people realize that. So it'll be very difficult to go back into the game from a coaching point of view. And even though it is my passion, I've got a small little family now. And it takes, when you're a coach, you probably work twice as hard, if not harder, as the players, and you get paid a fraction of what they get paid, and you're busy weekends, So I'd love to be there for my kids on the weekends. And yes, I still do Super Sport, and that takes up some weekends as well. But it is what it is at the moment, and the Super Sport work keeps me close enough to rugby now that I still get sort of that adrenaline and that rush because of the love of the game. So I'm pretty happy where I'm at. And as you mentioned, I work at Citadel Wealth Management. I head up our philanthropy division there as well. So very much in the non-profit space, and that's why it's nice just to be involved with with a players fund and to see the fantastic work that Gail and Tori and everybody does, and just to see in what positive way our recipients actually influences me. And then I've sort of, with some friends, we started a little startup called My Fan Park as well. So you can go have a look at that, which is a pretty cool concept as well, and a business that's sort of expanding into other parts of the world as we speak.
Fantastic. From my point of view, I'd just like to say thank you. You're a remarkable interviewee. Yes, thank you very much, Terry. For those of you who'd like to just quickly fill in the poll, it's quite easy if you want to see it. These are just general questions. We can't see it. You never filled in your email addresses or anything beforehand, so we just want to know these are general. Where did you hear about this event? Did you enjoy the presentation? Jean, you'd like to see 100% hell yes so far. And what was the last questions? Would you like invitations to future events? Also 100% yes. So this is our very first event that we've done of this nature for the Players Fund, and we've been finding our feet. So I think it's been an outstanding event. So I just wanted to say to you, Jean, and to the team at Players Fund, they've been outstanding, and all of your supporters and friends all across the country have really, really helped us make this. And I think this is something that will grow as well. So thank you very much for that. If I'd like to Dr. Dean Allen, maybe you'd like to say something?
Thank you, Andre. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd just like to echo Andre's thanks there, because we couldn't have done this without a great team. We've all been working hard in the background. But first of all, I'd like to thank Jean for being the guinea pig as the players' chairman. Of course, he was the natural selection, but I hope everybody will agree. He is Captain Fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to have got to know him over the course of this evening and before. And thank you so much, Jean, for your time. I really do appreciate it. And everybody, if you would please support this on a weekly basis, that would be fantastic. We're going to bring Skultberger to the playing field next week, so I'm sure Jean will actually enjoy listening to his one of his best teammates and roommates. What I'm going to do is ask him some questions of why he's such a bad roommate. Of course, that's the thing. So, but Jean, would you just like to have a final say and just to thank everybody? That would be great.
I would, Dean. Yeah, thank you very much, and to you, Andre, the whole team. Thank you very much for putting all of this together. You know, my job is easy. I just sit here and talk about my experiences. It's the work that's been put in prior to this and putting this event together. That's the tough part. So thank you very much to all of you. I would like to thank everybody that tuned in tonight. Just to find out a little bit more about, I suppose, the Players Fund as well. And as you can imagine, you know, with COVID-19 now, as a non-profit entity, we do have some challenges as well. So any kind of donations are welcome at this stage. So you know, we believe that that we make friends of the fund, and that for us is very important. We're very passionate about rugby, but this is a very important part of rugby in South Africa, and an opportunity for you to be able to play a positive part and make a positive impact in rugby in South Africa, and those that have been affected badly by the game. And our recipients definitely do appreciate the work that gets put in and every single donation that comes in. So to everybody that tuned in, thank you so much. It's been lots of fun for me. The truth is that no one else was available, and that's why they had to use me. The highlights and all the big players are coming next week and the weeks after that. So please do tune in. Skalkberger will be amazing. He will be much better than me. I can guarantee that. And then hopefully some big names to follow on that. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Dean, Andre, everyone, thanks so much. And please do support the fund if you can.
And
yes, I've suddenly realized we've done one mistake here today, Dean. We haven't got the fund on the right-hand side here. So if Tori or Gail have the fund details, just the bank account details, if they can drop it into chat. Otherwise, you know where to find it and where to go. What we'd like to do now is, the meeting is officially over, but if you'd like to stay behind, John, I don't know if you've still got some time. There were so many other questions. And if the people maybe can chat with you, or if you want to go back to your children, it's also okay. But if people want to stay on for a little bit, we're not going to close the meeting. Anything from your side, Gail?
Andre, we need to do the thank you wave, please.
Yes, so if you guys haven't done this before, just quickly, this is for the recording. You can turn your view onto gallery view, first of all. The second thing you need to do is, I see the last couple of pages, your cameras are off, so if you can just turn your cameras on. And so what you do, if you can see me, is you wave both your hands like this. So if you like John, do this, and we'll be flicking through the pages if we can there. Terry, just flick through the pages. And for the recording, John, thank you very much, buddy. That was outstanding. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for your support. And if you'd like to